Can you hear me okay? Great. Well, it's such an honor to be with you all. And Danielle, thank you so much for inviting me. And Darshan Gu, thank you too. And Jen Baca for organizing us and making this really inspiring gathering already. So on this panel, we are going to focus on the importance of listening and storytelling. And it is such an honor for me to have this time highlighting these four people and their ideas and helping to bring them out with you. They're an amazing group of people, each of them very complex and many things in their own right. So I'm going to give you a brief sense of who we have up here on the stage. We have people here who are scholar activists who have figured out how to listen to communities and bring the insights from communities to light in order to try to achieve well-being, the well-being that we've been talking about. We have activists who have been inspired to act through listening to people, through the stories that they heard from people. We also have people who are figuring out how to enable all of us to carve out the space to hear each other's stories, to be able to tell our own stories. And we've also have expert storytellers who, in the act of telling stories, experience life-changing events and learned how to even become a better storyteller through reflecting on what they experienced. So, to give you a bit more detail on who these folks are, to my left is Rob Watson, who is a professor at Harvard. His official title is the inaugural executive director of Ed Redesign. He's also a lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and he's a faculty affiliate of the Bloomberg Center for Cities at Harvard. And then to his left is Kate Woodsum, who's the founder and publisher of Invisible Threads. And then to her left is D. Graham Burnett, who is the Henry Charles Lee Professor of History and History of Science at Princeton University. And then to his left is Brianna or Bree Stensrud, who's the director of Women of Welcome. So please join me in welcoming these amazing people. And my goal is to ask a few questions to get them to share their insights with you all, and then we will definitely have time for your questions. You will see the QR code if you don't have it already on the screen, or you can submit questions by going to slido.com, and just a reminder that the hashtag you'll use is hashtag #AfterNeoLib. And we welcome you to be asking questions throughout our time together. But so my first question for you all, and I guess we can just go in order, but eventually we'll become more conversational, is just if you could share your insights about what you have learned about the importance of storytelling and listening to people, and how what you want to share with all of us about what it is that we're currently missing and what we need to change, and your own insights on what we need to do in order to lift up those stories and experiences. And if you could try and hold your remarks to 5 minutes, I trust you all. I'm not gonna, pull out the cane and yank you all, but we'll try. I'm gonna try and give us enough time to answer questions. So yeah, Rob, why don't you go first?
Thanks, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. So Rob Watson again here at the Ed Redesign Lab at Harvard Graduate School of Education. So I'll just start a bit about what motivates me and I think our organization more broadly around stories and lived experiences is we all know very well, and it's already been talked about earlier today, there's a declining American dream, right? Someone born after World War II had a 90% chance of earning more than their parents in adulthood. Someone born in the 1980s like me, it's a coin flip. In the neighborhood I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, about 90 minutes north of Harlem 125th Street on New York City, on the North Side neighborhood, someone like me who grew up in public housing, a low-income black male, goes on to earn $14,000 as an adult. They have about a 50% likelihood of being incarcerated at some point in their life. Someone of any background living in that neighborhood lives to be about 72, 73 years old, compared to even in that small city of 30,000 and other nearby neighborhoods, you live as long as 85, 90 years old. And so this is the kind of tragedy of place that I think motivates me, motivates us, motivates many of the communities we work with across the United States. But we also believe there's a power of place, that as surely as there's problems like this that have been with us a long time, there are communities who figured something out, who are coming up with a solve for that declining American dream. They're figuring out how to turn that curve. And so we're really motivated at the Ed Redesign Lab to work in partnership with over 70 communities across the United States in urban, suburban, and rural contexts, in red, blue, and purple America, places as diverse as Poughkeepsie, New York, to the Mission District of San Francisco, to South Dallas, to Appalachian, Kentucky, Spartanburg, South Carolina, all thinking about how do we take these places that raised us, that often have intractable intergenerational problems, but also through locally led, power-sharing liberalism, are reimagining the American dream. And so we're really excited to tell those stories. This January, we're launching a new project at our organization called the Creator Journalism Project. And the basic idea is, what if some of America's greatest storytellers teamed up with some of the great practitioners working at the local level across sectors to think about how communities have a solve, a piece to the puzzle, whether it's in mixed income housing or early childhood or reimagining democratic governance. What are those stories? What are those places? And how are they shaping a new paradigm for what might be possible in this country? So how in South Dallas, and in Dallas more broadly since the pandemic, have they reduced child poverty by a third? The second largest decline in child poverty in the US since the pandemic. How in Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the north side of Spartanburg, did they reduce violent crime by 84%, increased third grade reading from 5% to 51% in a few years? How are folks leveraging different types of frameworks and philosophies, not just to improve issue areas, but to create a sort of civic renewal that I think motivates all of us here in this room? So I think those are the stories we're excited to tell. We're partnering with two journalists. One is Joe Posner, who co-founded Vox Video with Ezra Klein and has catapulted many of the top creator journalists on YouTube. We know that Americans 18 to 44 get most of their news on social media now. And so if we want to think about storytelling and where those stories live, we have to grapple with our changing media environment. We also know that the majority of Americans under 49 think the American dream is slipping away. And so our play on this project is really to both tell great stories, to motivate and inspire. A hero of ours in our field, Jeffrey Canada, says, despair is contagious, but hope is too. And so we're trying to give our country and our field and the layperson a shot of hope on what's possible when we really believe in the power of place.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Kate.
Hi, I am, let me just back up a little bit.
I don't think your mic
Can you
is
hear
on.
okay?
Can you hear me? Testing,
There we go.
testing.
I think it.
There you go.
It
Here we
just
are.
was.
Nope, I'll take the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Okay. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Here you go. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. I'm the founder and director of the Invisible Threads Impact Lab, which looks at the connections between mental health and democracy. And one of the common threads between the two is trauma and how we treat it or make it worse. I spent 23 years in global news, from Cuba to Cambodia to Hong Kong, looking at declining democracies and authoritarian societies and what was the common denominator in all of them. And what it is that people are in pain and they want to feel better. And when you don't have the information, resources, and skills and support to heal, people who are in pain often perpetuate the very pain they hope to disrupt in the first place. I knew that going into the January 6th Capitol attack, which I covered for the Washington Post. And so I had a sense that this wasn't just a political issue, right? This wasn't just a left-right issue. This is a nervous system issue. And when I say that, I mean that the one thing that unites all of us, the one neurophysiological reality that we all share and that we constantly miss in all of these conversations, is that every single one of us has a nervous system that is trying to keep us alive and safe. It is constantly scanning for danger. It is constantly picking up information from the world to determine whether or not we can relax and lower our shoulders, we can be open to other ideas, we can be curious and compassionate, Or should we be guarded? Should we be defensive? Should we make our point? Should we physically attack? Should we run away? Or should we shut down completely? I suffered complex PTSD from covering the Capitol attack. And as I was going through my own healing process, I realized that I had to step out of a system that was keeping me dysregulated. I recognized that our media system, our political system, our economic system is keeping people in chronic states of fight, flight, freeze, and appease. And I was both a victim and a perpetrator of this dysregulation. So I left the Washington Post in December 2023. I've been working with neuroscientists, trauma experts, storytellers, systems thinkers, people like you, to consider what is the information, what are the strategies, what are the resources we need so that journalists, civic leaders, communities can actually begin to recognize these stress patterns that are built into our economies, that are keeping people so activated that they actually perceive truth as a threat, right? So until we begin to recognize what's our state of stress in this moment, is it helpful to me, or is it making me think my neighbor or the person who is on the stage saying something I didn't like is somebody I should avoid or lash out at, right? And not only do we need to recognize that, we need to have the skills to stabilize, regulate, and engage. So when it comes to stories, stories are how we make sense of the world, right? It's how we connect. It's how we understand ourselves and others around us. And those stories are shaped by our stress, what we have experienced today, what our ancestors have experienced before. My goal is to help connect those dots.
Thank you. And you can hold on to that microphone.
Okay.
Yeah. So please, yes.
Great. Let's see. Can you all hear me with this thing? Maybe.
Check.
Let's see. Lightly touching the different testing.
Thank you.
Testing. Okay.
Great.
How about that?
Great,
Yes.
great,
Okay.
super.
Great. I'm Graham Burnett, and it's an enormous pleasure to have a chance to talk with you all and to be up here with these fabulous folks. So I think I'm here because I'm the founder and director of a nonprofit called the Institute for Sustained Attention. And over the last 10 years, we've built a really extraordinary team of young activists built out of a community, a coalition called the Friends of Attention. And I'd like you to put that in your heads, the Friends of Attention. Little invocation there of the great tradition of the Quakers and their particular forms of activism. The Friends of Attention, this nonprofit coalition, is a community that focuses on forms of resistance to this historically unprecedented societal scale intensive commodification of the human capacity to give time and thought and sensory engagement to the world, our attention. So as introduced, I did a PhD in the history and philosophy of science at Cambridge, was there on a Marshall with Danielle back in the day, so we're old chums. And at Princeton, I hold a chair in the history of science, and that's the field I teach. And for the last 15 years now, I've been working in different ways on the history of the scientific study of human attention in laboratories. And I would love to talk with you all about that because it's fascinating. It's fascinating to understand how human attentive responses were sliced and diced in those laboratories en route to the setting of conditions of possibility where that attention can be priced in our new attention economy. And it was out of that work coming to understand how powerfully the project to quantify, operationalize, instrumentalize human attention. A lovely research project. I don't want to kind of, am I allowed to say shit talk? I don't want to shit talk all the beautiful scientists who did all that beautiful work across those years. Admittedly, many of them were being paid by the military-industrial complex because, of course, what people were really interested in with human ability to track and trigger sensory stimuli on screens was shooting down airplanes and durational vigilance to radar screens. So there is a bit of I don't want to sound paranoiac, but there's a story as to how we got so interested in those particular forms of attention, tracking and triggering, stimulus response, and the forms of durational vigilance to screens, these cybernetic forms of attention that are our central challenge in certain ways if we care about storytelling. Now, it's not an accident that we've ended up under these conditions. And so what we think about as the Friends of Attention and the work that we've done by creating a nonprofit school in Brooklyn called the Strother School of Radical Attention, please come and visit us in Dumbo. This work centers on saying that given that this new, again, historically unprecedented business model has emerged in the last 15 years, which has permitted direct access to the monetization of nothing more or less than the core components of human consciousness. It's never been possible previously directly to commodify interest, care, curiosity, your need for other human beings. These could be commodified only at second and third degrees of mediation. Now you have a direct stent into the eyes, heads, and hearts of essentially every human on the planet. So we now have more smartphones than humans on the planet, and smartphone penetration globally is at the scale of sort of 75%. 95% of points of access to the internet are smartphone-based at this point. And the business model that drives that $17 trillion industry at this point is a business model rooted in maximizing time on device eyeballs. AI-driven, all the smartest school leavers, all the most sophisticated algorithmic technologies, focusing on maximizing TOD, time on device. And I know there are some of you out there who know German and know that TOD is the German word for what? Death, thank you. Out there, right? Yeah. So to cook it back down and link this directly to storytelling, if you want to have a shared world, human attention, real human attention, that openness of our senses and minds and time to what obtains, and our capacity to give our time and mind and senses to each other and to ourselves and to the world, all that is a condition of possibility for a shared world. It is how a shared world happens. And if you create, in 10 or 15 short years, a radically new, exploitative, extractive business model that we call human fracking, remember that, because how does petroleum fracking work again? You drive down into the surface of the earth, high pressure, high volume detergents in order to break up deep tectonic structures and force to the surface a monetizable spume of hydrocarbons. How do social media platforms work? They work by pumping into our faces high pressure, high volume detergent in the form of toxic media feeds to break up those durational capacities to give ourselves to the world and force to the surface a monetizable spume of our attention. So, and the harms are again precisely parallel, right? You have tectonic disturbances, little earthquakes, toxicity at the surface level, pollution. We see and experience this. So I'm going to wrap at my 5 minutes, and I'll just say this. You want stories, you want shared worlds, you want an ability for folks to make the worlds they want to make. True human attention is the way you do that. And so what we, I thought they'd put, gancho, I thought they'd turn my mic off, yeah. What we need to do is get very serious about having a movement at the scale of the movement we had back in the 1960s with respect to the environment, There's an external environmental crisis and there's an internal environmental crisis. And at this point, it's the internal one, and the solution to that one is a precondition for addressing the external one. So we need a movement at that scale of attention activism to reclaim, take back, and to humanize the human use of human attention. And that's the work that we do it in an academic way at Princeton, happy to talk about that in a sort of scholarly way, but really it's the activist part of it that I think lands right now. And the last thing I'll say very quickly is just this. Don't let anybody throw you off in this conversation by talking about the problem being phones or the problem being social media. These are not the problem. If phones had been invented by like my grandmother, you would use your phone to like call home. And if social media had been invented by like two like kind of cool Buddhist monks and Marina Abramovich, it would be a really great way to like share your creative life. These systems have been invented, designed, and scaffolded in societal scale digital networks precisely to frack money value out of the deepest stuff of personhood. And it's working. And that's why we don't feel good. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks. Brianna. Yeah.
Do I
thank
need
you.
this? Do I?
Just keep talking.
Should I
we'll see.
should I use this or should I use this?
I think
Probably the
use
mic?
Handheld. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Use
you.
the mic.
Yeah.
Here we go. Get that out of my ear. Hi, my name is Bree Stensrud, and I am the director of a community called Women of Welcome. Women of Welcome is a community of conservative to moderate, theologically and politically minded women who are interested and engaged in the spaces of immigrants and refugees. And I know that might sound a little bit shocking and surprising to a lot of folks that evangelicals care about immigrants and refugees. I think nearly every headline that we have about us says the exact opposite. But Women of Welcome is a community of about 150,000 women from across the country who have deep levels of compassion and are very curious as to how they move forward in this space that feels very off limits to them and feels very political and divisive, and they are told that this is not a space for them. So Women of Welcome actually engages evangelical ladies in 4 very distinct ways. And one is that we encourage them. Encouragement is an underestimated value, I think, in our society. Everybody needs to be encouraged, but in particular, conservative women who find themselves with deep levels of compassion, deep levels of experience in international missions trips and humanitarian work and volunteering in their communities. They have a deep level of compassion, and they're not exactly sure what to do with that in this space. They also have a very deep sense of grief for the underestimation that they had about all of the things that we are now seeing come to fruition politically are coming to fruition. And for various reasons, there was a drastic underestimation of these happenings taking place. But there is a deep sense of grief. And as we all know, the evangelical base is very powerful, not only in the faith-based community, but politically as well. And so you have a hungry and grief-filled group of women who have a lot of privilege and have a lot of power, but they lack proximity. And that is something that Women of Welcome focuses on in a huge way, and I'll get to that in a second. But encouragement, hey, your compassion is not misplaced. You are not alone, and there is a place for you to create change in immigration reform and in the humanitarian work of resettling refugees. The second thing that we do is a lot of education. I am what you would call probably a trusted translator. Immigration is very complicated. The policy is more complicated than tax law. And so just trying to decipher what do the headlines actually say, what does this policy actually mean? And I'll have to say this, I know probably some of you are thinking, looking at me, why is a blonde, blue-eyed white woman speaking up and educating people about a minority community? I get that. It's strange, is it not? And yet, it is my responsibility as someone who was born like this, looks like this, grew up as an evangelical Christian myself, is to be a trusted translator so that I could lend my privilege, I could lend my voice to introducing people in closer proximity to relationships, stories, and experiences. So the education is such a huge part of saying you are needed and wanted in this space, you are welcomed in this space. And it's difficult and it's challenging. Not everybody wants to enter into this space, but you belong here. And let me tell you how you can fit in and how you can translate the headlines. The third thing that we do is engagement. A lot of what our community lacks in this regard and in this space is proximity. So we encourage our ladies to choose it. You must choose proximity to things that frighten you and to people that you do not know. And that is a choice. And so we do border immersive trips where we take women, delegations of women. We've taken hundreds of evangelical women down to the border to meet with Border Patrol agents, customs agents, migrants themselves, shelter directors, pastors, priests. We try and give them a complex picture so that they can bear witness to something that becomes personal to them. So that when they return home, it is not the news or the headlines or the stories, it's their own personal experience that they are now bringing to their congregations and to their communities. And that is incredibly powerful because you cannot argue with someone's experience. So we do engagement in that way. And then the fourth thing that we do is we help women who, for likely the most part, this would be their first time to engage and activate themselves in a public policy space. So there's a very big difference between partisan politics and public policy, and that is something that we do a lot of discipleship on in our community. Immigration is just completely co-opted as a partisan issue, and it's too liberal, it's too progressive for conservatives to enter into, and I reject that because this is a human element. As Christians, we believe in the dignity and sanctity of every human life. I have seen, and I've done it myself, women who are in conservative to moderate spaces, they will show up for the preborn issue. They will show up for adopt orphans and widows and vulnerable women. They will show up for the anti-trafficking movement. They will show up for foster care. So I've seen them engage in policy spaces in partisan ways and also in nonpartisan ways. I want immigration, because it is about people, to be a part of that conversation that they have. I come from my experiences in the pro-life movement, and I know that makes some people really squishy and upset. But what I would say is I personally attach the immigration issue to my pro-life ethic. I believe in the dignity and sanctity of every human life, and I believe that starts from womb to tomb. And so if I can help a woman who has a deep sense of grief about how their immigrant neighbor is being treated, or about how persecuted peoples from around the globe are no longer allowed to come to the United States for safety, if I can give her tools and I can empower her to say, you know what, you can have biblical confidence in this space that translates into universal confidence in this space, so that when she walks in to have a conversation about what she cares about, which is abortion and orphans and trafficking victims, that in that conversation, it would become a more holistic life conversation that includes the immigrant and the refugee without any controversy. And so I'm working from a framework of how do we have a whole life pro-life perspective, and that motivates and that connects with more conservative to moderate evangelical women. So the stories that are coming from these ladies about their ability to choose proximity, whether that be at the border or in our local proximity events that we do in their backyard, in their own community, is something that is life-changing, and I hope will also change public policy for the flourishing of immigrants and refugees. I will tell you a really quick story, since I think I have 1 minute left. We have been doing, since the border is essentially closed at this time, we have kind of pivoted to local proximity events. So instead of doing kind of these immersive experiences for 3 days down at the border, we're doing one-day events in your own backyard, in your own community. And so we spend the morning learning about what are the legal pathways, how broken is the immigration system, and then we listen to and we hear from, and I introduce them to local migrants and other immigrants who have been resettled in their community. And so you're hearing a story from someone in your own backyard who is telling you what their experience is going through that system and also then existing in their own community. Were they welcomed? Were they loved on? Is it difficult to get through the system? Is it difficult to find housing? What does that look like to live as a migrant in your own community? And then we spend the afternoon learning from pastors. We have an immigrant-led congregation, and we have a non-immigrant congregation pastor. And we listen to them, and we ask really hard questions of, should you leave your church if they are anti-immigrant? Should you stay engaged if they are? What do you do with that? What does the Bible say? What does our faith compel us to believe and then do concerning seeking justice for our immigrant neighbors? And then we have a learning lunch where we say, you know what, so many of you have probably never engaged in politics before. Maybe some of you have, but it's been for the abortion issue. Let me explain to you why immigration is actually a pro-life issue. Let me actually explain to you that the very things that anchor you in other human dignity spaces will also anchor you in the immigration space. And then we spend the afternoon together talking with representatives on both sides of the aisle. And let me tell you, that is a wild experience. So I have Democratic offices who are very confused about why a group of 50 evangelical women want to meet with them. I've never, when we talk with these representatives, they'll say, you know what, I drew the short straw today. I have to be honest. I don't know why I'm here. I've never had a meeting with evangelicals before. And every woman will go around, every single one, and they will share their story in tears. You have to help me. I want to be a part of the solution. My son's best friend's dad is now gone. What do I do? How do I correct this? Tell me where to engage. My congregation is no longer showing up. Half my congregation is no longer showing up out of fear of deportation and apprehension. What do I do? How do I work with your office? And so it is a emotion-filled, tear-filled meeting that we have. And at the end of the day, it's almost like I wish there could be a camera in the room, because you have what seems to be enemies in the same room, and they are finding common ground, and the humanity that is shared between them is just so palpable. And then, of course, when we go in and we meet with more Republican conservative leaders, they think they're going to have a meeting that gives them a pat on the back, and those meetings are fun too. And our ladies go around the room. I actually had a representative stop the storytelling right in the middle of half of us getting through. And he said, so does everyone kind of here have the same kind of feelings of, disappointment? And I said, I'm sorry, with all due respect, some of these women have never used their voice in this space before, and I'd love for you to hear their stories. And he said, okay, go for it, And some of them take copious notes, and some of them don't, But then we get around the room, and it's shocking. And every time they say, I had no idea that evangelical women cared. I had no idea they had stories, personal stories, that they wanted us to know about engaging in this space. So at the heart of this is me trying to introduce people to other people's stories that matter, and then them sharing those stories to people in power. So all of this circles around a lack of proximity and how I'm trying to engage my own community in choosing more proximity to hear those stories and then to share them with influences that matter.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Yes. Me too. Okay. Yes, thank you all so much. The reason you all were pulled together for this panel is because of this deep recognition by Danielle and Darshan and other people who put this conference together that if we are truly going to reimagine the political economy, if we're really going to have a political economy that brings people to safety and happiness, like our declaration promised, to produce the general welfare, like our Constitution promised, we need to listen to people more. And I know, so Jason Furman on the first panel mentioned, brought up this balance between listening to the public and listening to experts. And, there's some times when you don't necessarily want to take the lead from the public as a whole. It might put us down the wrong path. But let's be honest, that the current state of affairs is that the balance is way out of whack. There's not enough listening to the experiences of ordinary people. And if we bring our minds just to the fact that, roughly 37% of adults in the US have a college degree, and the rest don't, and how many of us in this room know people without a college degree, there's a gaping hole there between our work as experts and our ability to actually listen to the voices of people in this public. So I would love for you all to share your wisdom from the listening you have done and are doing and are enabling, what you can reflect on with respect to the political economy, what it means for how we ought to reimagine our political economy. And let's go in the same order, because you've had a while to think now, Rob, and then we will have a few minutes for questions from the audience. So let's see, do you need a mic?
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I think I'm good. So a few things I put on the table. So I think one is in this world that I'm a part of, which is about locally led, place-based, whether it's a neighborhood, a city, a region of multiple counties and rural areas, is this idea that we have to create spaces for collaboration, and that collaboration is not free. So in our field, we often have some sort of quarterback organization whose job it is to wake up every day, to bring actors together, everyone from the single parent mom living in public housing, to the mayor, to the college president, to everyone in between, to think strategically and collaboratively across sectors about how to do things like reduce child poverty, or how to ensure that the built environment reflects our greatest aspirations for it. And so I think often we are frustrated by reduced civic participation or collaboration, but that's because we have to really design spaces at the local level to make it work. Our colleague Peter Levine at Tufts talks about a few moves you need to have a robust civic life at the local level. You need to have spaces for people to deliberate, because none of us know everything, and we need to have spaces to learn from each other across difference. And I think in our field, we see that some of the best work happens is just even defining the problem. In the north side of Poughkeepsie, a kid grows up here, and it's a poverty trap. Why? And then from there, the idea is, well, what are we going to do about it on Monday morning? We then have to have spaces to do things of public value together in the public sphere. And so what does it look like in my hometown when we teamed up in the public housing complex I grew up in, where our current mayor, Yvonne Flowers, grew up in, and think about how do we transform that housing project, where a few of us were the lucky ones, into a high opportunity neighborhood? What are the different things we need to think about? What are the community organizing principles? So creating something of public value together. And then how to, beyond any one issue area, do we create the sorts of relational connectedness, the social trust, the cross-class interaction that creates durable civic infrastructure over time, the same way we talk about roads and bridges, right? So I think those are a few things that motivate us. And that Danielle talks about this in Power Sharing Liberalism, this idea of bringing the market, civil society, and government into conversation together, really thinking at the local level about how we can build capacity. So in City of Poughkeepsie government, we're a city of 30,000 people. Our folks are trying to, do potholes and police and fire. They didn't have the capacity to think about kids at scale. But when we come together as a community, we might have a shot at this thing. And so how do you create conditions for sectors and individuals of different stripes, of different hierarchies, to be on equal footing together, working towards the public good? How do we have this reflective patriotism, which both holds a pride of being from Poughkeepsie, but the failures that have been with us a long time, or the pride of being an American, but the unrealized dream as we approach 250 as a country, right? And so how do we create the space to do both at the same time and be sophisticated and compelling? How do we think about connectedness just in general, whether it's in the faith-based community or young people coming together? So I think what we're really excited about is just how does this work we're doing, centered on social and economic mobility at the local level, create opportunities for citizens to be artists, to be creative, to work together, and how beyond the issue area itself, when you put something like kids and their experiences at the table and front and center, it creates opportunities for unlikely allies. So an unlikely ally is Rob Rollison, who was a Republican he's a state senator in New York, lifelong Republican, retired police officer, and activists like my friend Kylene Greer, who was a big organizer on the left, teaming up as we started our children's cabinet in my hometown to think together about improving outcomes for kids. The Democratic city, Republican county in the Mid-Hudson Valley in New York, and so unlikely folks who didn't know each other growing up, but coming together around a common mission for kids. And we see that when we do these sorts of moves, when we think strategically and collaboratively at the local level, when we create new mechanisms for attention, when we don't make assumptions about certain groups and we think about their interests and their values, we can get things done. And that our goal is, as I shared earlier, in the new year, we really want to tell these stories. We think there's something special happening in this country and that we just don't know about it as much as we should, and that a big part of it is breaking through the American carnage narrative at the national level, and just that for every problem in this country, there's a place, there's a piece to this puzzle in solving it. And so I'm really excited about that. And again, I see it every day. I'm lucky that, although I'm based here in Cambridge, I'm on the road often outside of the Ivory Tower. And a bit of our motivation is, we want to reimagine the value proposition of higher education itself, and that when higher education in the hood team up, really interesting things can happen. And so I would just say, I kind of reject this notion of like the elite, the scholar, and as if they can't coexist. I think a lot of us in this place come from the hood itself. So I think there's some really interesting sophistication we can do at the local level and how we think together across sectors.
When we are calling for more listening and more civil discourse, we are missing a biological fact, which is that it is very difficult to listen when you are experiencing acute or chronic stress. So think about when you've had, when you're in conflict with a partner or a colleague, and you think back and it sounds like wah, 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 right? You cannot remember exactly what they said. A lot of people say it's because you're thinking about what you want to say in response, which is true. But there's another thing happening, which is that your brain is essentially scanning for threats. And so the energy that normally would go into active listening is actually directing your blood to flow to your big muscles to fight, to your lungs to breathe harder, to your heart to go faster. There's actually changes in your ear where the blood flows away from it, and there are a switch in the hearing capacity so that you're listening for big noises like a bomb or something instead of the small detail-oriented observations of what your partner is saying. So the calls for civil discourse are missing this neurophysiological fact, right? And let me give you an example of how this plays out in real time and how it can actually shift. So when I was at the Capitol on January 6th for the Washington Post, I was on the back side of the Capitol. Rioters had already breached, and a woman inside was shot and killed. Her name was Ashley Babbitt. News of that had spread. And when people on the backside of the Capitol saw me in a bulletproof vest with a camera person next to me and a press badge, they said, "Who do you work for?" And I said, "The Washington Post." I've since left, but that's who I worked for at the time. When they heard that I was a reporter for the Washington Post, a guy surged at me and said, "The Washington Post, you should be ashamed of yourself. A lady died because of your lies." So we were operating with a different set of facts. We were operating within different realities. And he was essentially looking for someone to blame. So my nervous system, which every single person in this room, left, right, center, has a nervous system, unless you are a robot. That's your brain, your brainstem, your nerves, constantly scanning for information to decide if you're safe or in danger. I wanted to run, I wanted to scream back, but I stood still. And I started nodding and looking at them and showing and signaling calm and signaling compassion. And that shifted it just enough for me to then say, "Help me understand what you're most upset about." Can you imagine the enemy of the people, a traitor to the nation, was curious about what they were concerned about? So then they started to say what they were concerned about, which is that they felt the media looked down on them. They felt that the media was hiding information. I wanted to say we're burnt out and we don't have time to cover everything, right? But it it was starting to calm just enough that there was a window. And this young guy in a leather jacket and a wife beater, that's probably inappropriate, a white tank top, said to me, "Hey, lady, you're a middle-aged white lady. You should be with us. You should be with us. You shouldn't be with Antifa," being a middle-aged white lady. And I turned to him and I said, "What about me says middle-aged?" He got embarrassed that maybe he had offended me. And the other people in the crowd laughed. And seeing my humanity, they reconnected with their own. The crowd de-escalated enough for me to move out. My point with this is that listening requires an awareness of our own stress state. It requires an awareness and compassion for the stress states of the people around us. Beyond that, that's the individual level, right? My individual stress state. The communal level is what's their stress state. The systemic level is what is contributing to this. So when Jen from Hewlett outlined what our economic policies have done to people over time, how people on the left and right both recognize that there is an extraction that is wearing people down and degrading not only our humans, but the political systems as well. We have to recognize that there has to be reform for an economy of well-being, right? There is science to explain what needs to happen. And when we talk about reforming the system, I think about the nervous system of democracy is burned out. The nervous system of democracy is traumatized. Trauma is when your nervous system cannot process the stress that you've experienced. It's when you perceive the world to be dangerous, even when you are perfectly safe in this moment, because there are changes in your brain that alter or diminish your capacity to tell the difference between the past and the present. It diminishes your capacity for reasoning, for critical thinking, no fault of your own, simple biology, right? And when you have entire populations, entire societies that are scanning for danger and looking about how to stay safe, you think that's me, that's you, that's us, that's them. Collective trauma creates polarization, which opens the door for democratic decline.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wish we had so much more time. The question is a question about recommendations with respect to political economy, and I'm sympathetic to this notion that part of what is needed is listening, which invokes a kind of therapeutic sensibility that the people need to be heard. There's a lot to be said for that, and this is a panel on storytelling. I'm in favor of storytelling and in favor of listening. I do think, however, though, that there's always a bit of a danger. Like, we're not interested in being heard, we're interested in power. And that's really important. So there is a way in which kind of the listening can become its own sort of palliative to let off a certain kind of forcible steam in the system. And we wouldn't want that. We want people to be heard with respect to their anger. And then we want their anger to be effective in securing power, because power is important for the folks not to be brutalized by those who want money more than anything else. So again, I'm a humanist, not an economist. And therefore, my basic response to the question on the table goes like this. If you build in place societal analytics that are functionally quantitative at core, that is, you activate the beautiful history of the social sciences, which are powerful ways of treating humans in community like a science problem. It was the application of the same techniques that were used to map the configuration of the planets to societies. And if you do that, you can do many good things Some of my best friends are economists. But if you are without a theory of value other than that which can be counted, you are definitively screwed. Because the counting, all that beautiful science which we love, jumps together very nicely with the units known as dollars and cents. And so what you end up with is a world in which value is money value. And that's the world we're in. And when your money value is the value, you max money. And that's bad for people in the end. It's bad for most of the people. It's even bad for the people who've got the money. They're unhappy. So I don't mean to sound, as it happens, I'm not an evangelical, but I am a Christian. And my own deepest view is that you can't do this sort of work of forming community meaningfully that is respectful of what humans are if you don't have a metaphysically thick account of humans. And that's why it's very bad that my fields, the humanities, are currently undergoing an extinction event in colleges and universities across the country. Why is that? Well, because the stuff we do doesn't monetize, actually. And if we had more time, I'd do a history of the modern university, and we could talk about how this set of disciplines came together precisely in part because they didn't monetize. They're the sort of metaphysical dilapidation of a set of theological domains that sort of fell out of favor in the university in the 19th century. So you end up with people reading poetry or whatever instead, which is lovely. But it was one of the last places where people could think about things about humans and the values that you could have in relation to humans that would not be denominated in dollars and cents. And we're just thin on that, team. We're thin on that. And so I haven't got a great plan for how you bring that back, honestly. I do think that our religious communities are very important. I think there are meaningful civic traditions in which this can be done, which are civic and secular, and we have representatives and defenders of that program here. But frankly, the definition of neoliberalism was in a sense hollowing out those kind of civic accounts of governance and displacing them with certain kinds of calculated theories of optimization, which worked. And look what we got. So part of the reason that we emphasize attention is that I believe attention is a language that is powerful for articulating the human use of humans. Although some of the technically sophisticated people in the audience will know that literally one of the 5 most cited papers in the history of the sciences is a paper called Attention is All You Need, which was written by 8 Google engineers. It's the underlying account of the transformer architecture that now drives our most sophisticated AI systems. And if we had more time, again, we could talk about the way that the attention in that piece is algorithmic data management tricks, the exact opposite of humans giving their time and mind and senses to the world, each other, and themselves. But it is the culmination of that optimization theory of attention that was sliced and diced in those laboratories across the 20th century. So attention is my language for talking about human values other than money values. I hope you have yours, all of you, and I hope you're able to help cultivate some communities that can share in accounts of the human that are thicker than most of what we work with, because if not, we're in very, very, very bad shape.
Thank you. Great.
I think one of the most practical ways that we can kind of talk about this is there has to be a desire and an emphasis on meeting people where they're at. And that makes all of us feel uncomfortable because everybody should be where we're at. Everybody should be thinking like I'm thinking because they don't understand my experiences and what I've been through and why what I'm thinking is the right way. And that means that we start to other people in ways that we didn't believe that we would, right? We become the very thing that we loathe in other people. So meeting people where they're at, honestly, has been the biggest point of success in my work with Women of Welcome. And that is that we have to connect and build on people's compassion and then encourage them to engage with curiosity. curiosity is also at the heart of how we make things work. We have to be curious enough about each other. And when we become curious, then we start listening well, and then we start paying attention to things that we didn't pay attention to before. And then we start to understand, or at least recognize, the ambivalence that so many of us have in our own viewpoints. So I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you a story. In the Women of Welcome community, I said it's 150,000 evangelical women across the country. About 50% of them I know voted for this current administration. About a quarter of them voted for Kamala. Another quarter of them didn't vote for a candidate on a ballot. They either wrote in or they didn't vote for the presidential candidate. What that tells me is there is a mix of women who have a commonality in theologically and in faith that compels them to stay connected in churches, to help and stay connected in their kind of really comfortable, curated communities. But it doesn't take away the grief and the change that they know and they feel in their depth, right? So what I would say about this is so you have half the community that voted for this administration, and that was higher during the first Trump administration. So many of them voted for that administration. And of course, you had huge support from the evangelical community about the so-called Muslim travel ban. And they were all on board with that. And there were safety issues and vetting issues and all of these things. Well, when the lift out of Afghanistan happened and the chaos that ensued, the women in my community became enraged and engaged. And what I mean by that is that unbeknownst to them, they had more proximity to the Muslim community than they thought. Because so many conservatives, their spouses, their family members are military members and owed their very lives to these Afghanis. And so you had women saying, what can I do? These people are family to us. How do we get them here? And we need to do it quickly. Their lives are at stake. And so there was a framing is that, when we were going through the travel ban, that these were terrorists, these were people who were not like us, did not share our culture, we didn't even know who they were, and they needed to be thoroughly vetted. But then when the lift happened out of Afghanistan, the rhetoric completely changed. These were allies, these were family friends, these were people we knew and that we loved. And so our proximity to that community and the language in which we attached to that community in the media and in communities changed. And so that shaped how people showed up and the curiosity they had about creating change and making a difference. So I know that so many women in our community that were thankful for the enhanced vetting and the travel ban features that it all entailed were also the same women who are saying, where can I show up to help? How can I bring these folks to America? And I was thinking, wait a second. You just said you didn't. Oh, but okay, now it's okay. Okay, do you know they're Muslim? You know they're Muslim. Like, we're all fine here, right? Like, we know. And women were like, yes, can we get them here? And I'm like, okay, I just feel like we just went 180 in a different direction. And it was because of rhetoric and it was because of relationship. And to me, we have to meet people where they're at, even when there is high levels of ambivalence. So what I say a lot in the Women of Welcome community is we can have safe and secure borders, we can have thorough vetting, but we can also have humane treatment of human beings that we all believe are made in the image and likeness of God. These things are not mutually exclusive concepts. They can coexist together. It's just we've not had the curiosity to think through what that would look like and then demand it of those who hold the power to institute it, right? So I would say, it's so interesting is that, we're out of time here. I would say it's so interesting is that women in the Women of Welcome are hungry to show up well because they haven't had the opportunity to show up well before. And so now when we invite them into this space and say, you're welcome here, we're going to meet you where you're at, even though you might have really ignorant questions, you might not have experience, You might actually have really crazy political views. I don't know what it is. You're welcome here to explore your own compassion and your own curiosity. And I'm not going to put you on a track that takes you from A to Z. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you in closer proximity to people, and then go on your own journey. And that journey is going to take you somewhere, and I don't know where it is, but it's not going to leave you where you're at. So I think we have to meet people where they're at, and we have to recognize that even though there is a high level of ambivalence in their own views and beliefs, that doesn't mean that they cannot be moved to cause greater flourishing for other people.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. You each have shown in your own way that we can do things differently. And I so appreciate your drawing attention to what we need to do to make space to actually hear people and for us to hear one another. And I beg your forgiveness for not getting to questions. I was really loath to interrupt any of you. I've just really relished the chance to learn from you. So join me in thanking these amazing panelists. Thank you so much.